If your mechanic told you your car was done at 100,000 miles, he was lying to you. Because today we are looking at 5 forgotten SUVs that easily hit 500,000 miles. And some owners are only stopping because they finally got tired of driving them, not because the engine asked them to. That is right, 500,000 miles, which is roughly 14 trips around the entire planet. Or one very, very long argument with your GPS. These SUVs never trended, never got the flashy commercials, and never showed up on anyone's dream car list. But they just kept running, long after flashier rivals were sitting in a junkyard somewhere, feeling sorry for themselves. So let's start counting down, beginning with the one that might already be parked in your own driveway without you even knowing what you've got.
Now here's the first vehicle on this list, and it might genuinely be sitting in your driveway right now without you knowing you basically own a small tank. The 2012 Honda CR-V is the kind of car that refuses to die out of pure spite, and honestly, if this generation had a personality, it would be the coworker who never calls in sick, never complains, and somehow outlasts everyone else in the building. Redesigned for that model year, this 4th-generation CR-V took everything people already loved about the nameplate and quietly made it better without turning it into anything flashy or complicated. And that quiet, boring competence is exactly why it belongs at the top of a list about longevity. Under the hood sits a 2.4-liter 4-cylinder engine that has become something of a legend among mechanics, not because it is powerful or exciting, because it genuinely is not, but because it just keeps running. Owners routinely report crossing 200,000 miles with nothing more than routine oil changes, and plenty push well past 300,000 without ever touching the engine internals. Independent reliability surveys consistently rank this generation of CR-V among the most dependable compact SUVs ever sold, and used car reliability studies covering vehicles up to 20 years old have placed it at the very top of its class. Inside, the cabin is a genuine masterclass in usability, with physical buttons, a clean dashboard layout, and a driving position that gives you an almost panoramic view of the road. Cargo space is enormous for the vehicle's footprint, and the rear seats fold completely flat, so hauling anything from groceries to furniture is effortless. Fuel economy is respectable too, with plenty of owners reporting real-world numbers in the low to mid-20s around town and comfortably higher on the highway, which for a vehicle this size and this old is genuinely impressive. Now, no car is perfect, and a small handful of these units were subject to a few manufacturer recalls over the years, along with some early reports of a parasitic battery drain that Honda addressed through a software update, plus the occasional rear differential that starts making a light groaning sound on tight turns simply because the fluid needs changing. None of this should scare you off, but it absolutely means you should ask for full maintenance records and get a pre-purchase inspection before handing over any cash, no exceptions. If you want the safest possible bet, look specifically for an EX or EXL trim with documented regular oil changes and a clean differential service history, since these tend to be the most trouble-free examples on the used market today. Because here's the thing people forget. Underneath that recall paperwork is still one of the most mechanically simple and famously stubborn engines Honda has ever built, and when properly maintained, this generation of CR-V is genuinely one of the last vehicles most owners will ever need to replace. In the used market, this model can be found starting at around $8,000, with prices reaching up to $15,000 depending on the mileage, trim level, and overall condition of the individual unit. For a vehicle that can comfortably outlive a mortgage, that is not just a good deal, that is borderline theft. And once you understand why a small, unassuming SUV like this can rack up that kind of mileage without complaint, the next entry on this list is going to make a whole lot more sense, because the pattern connecting these 5 vehicles is about to become impossible to ignore.
Number 4 on this list is a vehicle most people only discover after they have already Googled hidden reliability champions, and its name quietly pops up out of nowhere, which tells you almost everything you need to know before we even start. The 2012 Mitsubishi ASX is basically the introverted coworker of the automotive world, the one who never gets invited to the office party, never shows up in flashy commercials, and yet somehow outlasts every single person who does get invited. Under the surface, this compact SUV was built with a level of mechanical simplicity that has aged remarkably well. Depending on the trim, it came with either a 2.0-liter petrol four-cylinder or a 1.8-liter turbo diesel, and crucially, these engines use a timing chain instead of a rubber timing belt, which means one less expensive maintenance milestone hanging over your head every few years. Owners and independent reviewers alike have reported well-maintained examples comfortably crossing 250,000 kilometers, which works out to somewhere around 155,000 miles, without any major mechanical drama. Add in a genuinely tidy driving position, a 5-star safety rating that still holds up respectably today, and fuel economy that is perfectly reasonable for a small SUV, and you start to understand why this thing has quietly become a favorite among fleet and rental companies who care about exactly one thing: vehicles that do not break down. Now, in the interest of full transparency, a car this affordable and this old does come with a few things worth checking. Certain production years saw a couple of specific recalls related to brake pedal components and an engine stall issue that Mitsubishi resolved through an ECU reprogram. And some owners equipped with the continuously variable automatic transmission have reported occasional shuddering under acceleration, particularly on higher mileage units. None of this makes the ASX a bad buy, but it absolutely means you should request full service records, confirm any recall work was completed, and get a proper pre-purchase inspection before signing anything. If you want the safest possible path, prioritize a manual transmission variant with the petrol engine and a documented service history, since these tend to sidestep the transmission concerns entirely and represent the most trouble-free version of this vehicle on the used market. Here is the detail that really seals the deal, though. In some regions, rental and hire car fleets have made up as much as 40% of total ASX sales, and fleet operators are notoriously unsentimental. They only keep buying a vehicle over and over again if it consistently proves cheaper to maintain than the alternative. That is not marketing. That is an entire industry voting with its wallet for over a decade. In the used market, this model can be found starting at around $6,000, with prices reaching up to $12,000 depending on the trim, mileage, and overall condition of the individual unit. For a vehicle nobody talks about at dinner parties, that is a remarkably quiet bargain. And once you see how an overlooked little SUV like this earned that kind of trust from an entire industry built on hard numbers rather than hype, get ready, because what comes next takes this same idea of hidden, unglamorous reliability and pushes it even further.
Number 3 on this countdown is the vehicle that somehow convinced an entire generation of drivers that a compact SUV could actually be fun. And if you think that sounds like an exaggeration, wait until you feel one of these things take a corner. The 2015 Mazda CX-5 arrived with an idea that felt almost radical at the time. What if a small, practical family SUV did not have to feel like a punishment every time you got behind the wheel? Instead of numb steering and a transmission that hunts around looking for the right gear, Mazda gave this thing a proper conventional 6-speed automatic, genuine steering feedback, and a chassis that actually rewards you for driving it with a bit of enthusiasm. Under the hood, depending on the trim you find, you're looking at either a 2.0-liter or a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, built using Mazda's Sky Active philosophy, which essentially means squeezing genuine efficiency and durability out of a normal engine without bolting on a turbocharger or a bunch of complicated hybrid hardware that could fail later. The result is an engine that mechanics generally consider straightforward and reasonably long-lived when it is looked after properly. Inside the cabin, Mazda skipped the trend of stuffing everything behind a touchscreen and instead gave you a rotary command knob on the center console, so you can scroll through menus by feel without ever taking your eyes off the road, a detail that still feels smarter than half the technology being built into brand new cars today. Higher trims from this year even came equipped with a genuinely early form of automatic emergency braking at low speeds, which is a remarkable thing to have in a budget-friendly used SUV. Reliability surveys have consistently ranked this generation of CX-5 as one of the stronger performers in its class, and owners regularly report reaching well past 150,000 miles, with plenty pushing toward 200,000 using nothing more than consistent maintenance. Now, because no used car conversation is complete without a reality check, there are a few things worth verifying before you buy one. Some owners have reported premature wear in the front suspension struts, along with occasional oil consumption that makes regular level checks a genuinely good habit rather than an optional one. And this model year was included in a handful of manufacturer recalls, covering things like a windshield-mounted sensor bracket. None of this changes the fundamental character of the car, but it absolutely means you should ask for complete service records, confirm every applicable recall has actually been carried out, and get a proper pre-purchase inspection, rather than trusting a shiny paint job. If you want the smartest possible pick, look specifically for a touring or grand touring trim with a clean, consistent oil change history, since these tend to represent the most dependable and well-cared-for examples currently sitting on the used market. Here's a small detail that tends to surprise people. This same first-generation platform continued being sold in certain markets for well over a decade after its original debut, with only minor updates, largely because Mazda got the fundamentals so right the first time that a full redesign simply was not necessary for years. That's not a company resting on its laurels. That's a company that built something that didn't need fixing. In the used market, this model can be found starting at around $8,000, with prices reaching up to $15,000 depending on the trim, mileage, and overall condition of the individual unit. For a compact SUV that drives like it actually wants to be driven, that's an easy number to justify. And once you see how far a manufacturer can stretch a single well-engineered platform without ever needing to reinvent it, the next vehicle on this list is about to show you exactly how far dependable engineering can be pushed when everything about a car is built around outlasting everything else on the road.
Number 2 on this countdown is a vehicle so quietly overlooked that most people driving past one on the street could not tell you what it even is anymore. And yet, somewhere out there, a 2010 Suzuki Grand Vitara is still climbing a mountain road with the same confidence it had on day one. Suzuki basically built a mini Land Cruiser, handed it a compact SUV price tag, and then never really got the credit for it, which honestly feels like the automotive equivalent of a brilliant student who never raises their hand in class. Underneath that unassuming exterior sits a proper integrated body and frame design, reinforced with full-length structural rails, borrowing more from genuine off-roaders than from typical soft crossovers of the era. And most trims came standard with a 4-mode full-time 4-wheel drive system that plenty of vehicles twice the price still do not offer. The standard engine is a 2.4-liter 4-cylinder that on the gasoline versions relevant to this market uses a timing chain instead of a rubber belt, which quietly removes one of the most expensive maintenance milestones most other compact SUVs eventually force you to deal with. Some higher trims even came with a genuinely surprising 3.2-liter V6 for buyers who wanted a bit more muscle without leaving the reliability of this platform behind. Reliability ratings for this generation consistently land in the above-average range, and 4-wheel disc brakes, which were far from universal on affordable SUVs at this point in time, came standard across the board. Owners regularly describe this thing as mechanically simple, genuinely capable off the beaten path, and shockingly cheap to keep on the road. Now, in fairness, a handful of details deserve a closer look before you buy one. Certain production years were included in a factory recall covering a drive belt tensioner component that could wear prematurely. There have been scattered reports of headlights burning out sooner than expected, and the occasional air conditioning condenser fan giving up, and diesel-powered versions sold in some markets carry their own separate history of water pump and filter-related issues that petrol versions simply do not share. None of this should scare you away from the platform itself, but it absolutely means you should request full maintenance records, confirm any relevant recall work was actually completed, and get a proper pre-purchase inspection before handing over cash. If you want the safest possible path, stick with the 4-cylinder petrol engine paired with the automatic transmission and a documented service history, since this combination consistently proves to be the most trouble-free version of this vehicle available on the used market today. Here is the detail that makes this one genuinely special. This platform was engineered with a level of off-road seriousness that most compact SUV buyers never even end up using. Full-time four-wheel drive, low-range gearing on higher trims, and a frame built to handle genuine abuse, all wrapped inside something that still parks like a normal car and sips fuel like one too. That combination of real capability hiding inside an unassuming shape is exactly why this generation has quietly built such a loyal following among people who actually take their SUVs off pavement instead of just posting photos in a parking lot. In the used market, this model can be found starting at around $3,000, with prices reaching up to $7,000 depending on the trim, mileage, and overall condition of the individual unit. For a genuinely capable four-wheel drive vehicle at that price, you are looking at one of the last real bargains left in this segment. And once you see just how much substance a vehicle this affordable and this overlooked can actually deliver, get ready, because the very last entry on this list takes everything we've talked about so far, reliability, simplicity, and quiet long-term value, and combines it into what might be the single best example on this entire countdown.
Number 1 on this list is the vehicle that basically invented the entire category we've been talking about for the last several minutes. And if you have made it this far, you are about to see exactly why it earned the top spot. The 2012 Toyota RAV4 did not just join the compact SUV segment, it helped build the blueprint that almost every single vehicle on this countdown ended up following in one way or another, which is a bit like discovering the quiet kid in school who turned out to be the one who wrote the textbook everyone else studied from. Under the hood, most examples run a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine with a genuinely rare and slightly more powerful 3.5-liter V6 available for buyers who wanted a bit more punch without sacrificing any of the dependability this nameplate is famous for. Owners across the board describe this generation as remarkably car-like to drive, despite its tall ride height and generous ground clearance, and the interior packaging is smart enough that even models without a fold-out third-row seat still hide a clever storage bin underneath the cargo floor. Reliability data on this generation is genuinely excellent, with owner satisfaction scores regularly landing near the very top of the entire compact SUV segment, and it is not unusual to find examples cruising well past 200,000 miles while still running on nothing more than the basics: oil changes, brakes, and tires. Now, in the spirit of full transparency, there are a few things worth checking before you commit. Some owners have reported occasional oil consumption at higher mileage, along with a plastic radiator hose connector that a small number of units have needed replaced. And there have been scattered reports involving the EVAP emissions canister and a few interior rattles that are more annoying than serious. None of that changes the core of what this vehicle is, but it absolutely means you should ask for full maintenance records, confirm there are no outstanding recalls left unresolved, and get a proper pre-purchase inspection before finalizing anything. If you want the smartest possible choice, look for a four-cylinder model in limited or sport trim with a clean, consistent service history, since these tend to represent the most dependable and best cared for examples currently available. Here's the fact that really puts this vehicle's legacy into perspective. This nameplate did not just survive for a couple of generations and quietly disappear like some of its early competitors. It went on to become one of the best-selling vehicles in its class worldwide for years afterwards. And this specific generation is widely considered the moment the RAV4 fully matured into the dependable, no-drama SUV that families have trusted ever since. In the used market, this model can be found starting at around $7,000, with prices reaching up to $14,000 depending on the trim, mileage, and overall condition of the individual unit. For the vehicle that essentially wrote the rulebook this entire list has been following, that is not just a fair price, it might be the smartest one on the table.
And there you have it, 5 forgotten SUVs that quietly refused to quit long after the cars everyone was talking about have already been scrapped, traded in, or forgotten entirely. From a small SUV hiding in plain sight in your own driveway, to an overlooked crossover that fleets trusted with their own money, all the way up to the nameplate that basically built the category from scratch, the pattern here was never really a coincidence. Boring, unglamorous, mechanically simple engineering just keeps winning in the long run, every single time. If this list saved you from making an expensive mistake, or if it just confirmed that the SUV sitting in your driveway right now is a better investment than you gave it credit for, do me a favor and tap that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear exactly this kind of honest, no-nonsense advice. If you are new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we break down vehicles like this every single week. The kind that never trend, never get flashy commercials, and somehow still outlast almost everything else on the road. Drop a comment and let us know which one of these 5 surprised you the most. And while you're at it, tell us what you're currently driving, because that is exactly the kind of feedback that shapes what we cover next. Thanks for sticking around until the very end, and I'll see you in the next one.